Thank you very much. Perfect in time. Thank you very much for emphasizing also the lifestyle. So the thing that diet is real, the lifestyle, and this was I appreciate. Please.
Thank you, Stefanos, for this very nice presentation, especially about Crete and the famous example of the Cretan diet. And since we are here in the Vatican and the center of Christianity in the world, I would like to ask you something about the impact of religion in the dietary habits and the lifestyle of people, especially in Crete. I think that during the 60s and the 70s, where Ansel Keys made the 7-country study, that almost the majority of the people there were fasting for religious reasons during Wednesday and Friday and probably 40 days before Easter. Is this a profile of lifestyle that probably has a strong impact on the adherence to Mediterranean diet and especially consumption of olive oil? Could you make a comment on this?
Prokopios, a brilliant point. Thank you for your positive comments, first of all. Your question is a great one. And so we have included a visit to a monastery in the visit that we'll make coming up with a plant-based monastic cuisine meal. And there will also be a presentation on the role of fasting. But for our non-Orthodox colleagues, so they're familiar, in the traditional fasting of the church, there are over 150 days of the year from which meat is abstained. Professor Kafatos, who is now, he's still with us, but he's elderly, he's written extensively on this, and he documented from speaking to the Greek PI, or principal investigator, of Key's study at the time, that when the study was conducted, as you point out, I believe 70% of the women and I think 60% of the men, particularly in the rural areas, were following the fasting guidelines to the T. So this meant automatically off the bat a drastic reduction in the consumption of red meat and a dramatic increase in the consumption of ladera and other foods that Antonia mentioned. So it's a great point.
Stefano, thank you very, very much for that presentation. It's fascinating. So in your research, you're finding, generally speaking, culturally based or culturally driven menu and diet is not necessarily expensive. Is it so? Because if you're talking about Crete and you're talking about these places that people are eating healthy food, this concept of the healthy food must be also expensive. Could we debunk that concept through Mediterranean diet culturally driven menus and recipes?
Good points. I think in a place like Crete or even in southern Italy, the access to these kind of healthy foods, the greens, some of the fresh seafood, it's greater and cheaper, much cheaper than it is relative to the US. However, there was an analysis done some years ago by our colleague, Dr. Mozaffarian, and he basically did an analysis of like less healthy foods versus healthier foods. The difference generally comes down to about $1 a day or something like that. So, I mean, if you think about it's protecting your health, that's a very, very small difference. So I think a lot of that can be debunked. The problem is more getting people to do it. And also when there's so many unhealthy things that are in front of you. Not to criticize our host, but even now, I mean, we see potato chips and cookies while we're in an olive oil and Mediterranean diet conference. So everything in moderation, pan metron ariston, but it's hard to control your intake when it's right in front of you. So I think it's a big thing, you know, all this, where you position the foods, what's available, what's not available, and making healthy things available, it makes a huge difference.
Can I continue that? Earlier today, we saw a presentation with respect to direct and indirect cost of the food. So whereas the direct cost is actually hitting one's pocket, indirect cost of the food hits everybody's pocket. It hits societal pocket. So then could there be some policies that actually help with those problems to make food less costly?
Because we're out of time, and I'm not an expert on that, I'll be short. I think the answer is yes, but I don't know the specific policies that work to do that.